Hey guys, welcome to part four of our 7.4 end of Reconstruction and beyond PowerPoint. We were on Q9, racism in full force. Okay, make sure you watch the other three parts of 7.4 before joining us here. We were finishing up this slide. Yeah, public lynchings, whites getting away with it, very little done. The politics were in their favor. There were a lot of, unfortunately, racist politicians, police officers, and things like that that were a-okay with looking the other way. Now, again, I want to remind you guys, doing absolutes is dangerous. Does that mean every Southern politician was, corrupt? No, of course not. Does that mean every cop was racist and wouldn't care if something happened to a black person? Absolutely not. Of course, there's people in the South that are pro-civil rights or pro-equal, equality for all, doesn't care about your skin color and all that stuff. But the majority of Southern culture at the time was going to turn the other way and let whites get away with a lot while blacks were going to get away with nothing. Looking at the picture here, you guys, I mean, look how young this kid is. This is somebody your guys' age or maybe even a little bit younger. Racism, a lot of racism is something that's taught. And so kids are growing up in a society where all around them, their neighbors, their friends, their teachers, their politicians, their police officers, their parents, maybe even their pastor at their church or whatever, they're racist. It didn't seem racist, right? You wouldn't call it racist if you're a racist. You thought it was just right. It was the right way to go about doing things. And so unfortunately, you would just be growing up in this culture that taught you it was okay. And it really took a unique and strong person with very different morals than everybody around them that was willing to stand up and speak up, who was willing to, beat to the tune of their own drum and go against the norm to be somebody in the South that wanted equality, who was a scallywag, right? Somebody who was okay with Reconstruction, somebody who was okay with the Republican Party, somebody that was okay with the 13th and 14th Amendment. You as a white person or any other ethnicity, if you were on board with that stuff, you were risking your life to be vocal about that because it was not the culture in the South, by an overwhelming majority. So it took a special kind of person to stand up, and that's why it takes so long to see change. Change doesn't happen overnight for African Americans or other minority groups. It's something that takes, hundreds of years from slavery all the way to equality to really see progress be made. And even now today, for all being honest, right, we don't have true equality even now. Is it a lot better? Absolutely. We've made leaps and bounds from where we used to be, but we still have work to do, right? All right, so draw a line underneath everything you just wrote all the way across your page. Make sure you highlighted, okay? Take a look at this song, guys. You have access to all the slide clips, the video clips. I'd recommend that you listen to this. Billie Holiday is a very famous artist. It's a girl. I know you think Billie and most of you guys think boy. Okay, it's a woman. She wrote a song called Strange Fruit in 1939. And if you look at the lyrics, a strange fruit hanging from southern trees, she's not actually talking about real fruit. It's, it's a illustration of the lynchings that were happening in the South by the KKK and by other members of racist Southern society, and how often, how regular of an occurrence lynching was, to see African Americans hung by the neck from a tree. And so she has this song about that. Push pause and at least take a look at the lyrics. Very famous song. And so sad, just so sad. And if you have a chance, listen to the recording. Okay, moving on, we've got the KKK video clips again. They were in the last PowerPoint, the 7.3 PowerPoint. If you only watched a couple, I'd recommend watching a couple more. Or if you skipped it last time, then watch them this time and check out a couple of those to learn some history about the KKK. Okay, all right, so Q10, fighting through and finding hope. So the African American society does not have an easy go of it, do they? I mean, they've got their freedom and they've got equal citizenship and they've got the right to vote for African American men. And yet, do they? Right? It's all on paper that they have those things, but in a lot of ways, with sharecropping and the KKK and corrupt politicians and all kinds of things, they're really not getting a fair shake. So, of course, right, this hurting minority population who's not being shown equality finds each other, right? And so there's this emergence of African American churches, African American colleges, African American newspapers that are published. And I know some of you guys have never even seen a newspaper in real life with the internet and TV, but you got to understand newspapers were huge. Like the way you view internet is the way people thought of newspapers throughout the 18 and 1900s. Okay, so newspapers are a huge deal. And so they would find like people with like problems and like values, right? And so especially Black colleges and Black churches became places that organized social activities for African American communities. They'd have picnics, they would host Bible studies, and they also were places of information and education and social and political connections for African Americans. This is why even today, if you notice anything at all about African American culture, there is an element of church very much ingrained in it, right? Because this is one of the ways that they found each other and got through this hard period of time, and it just has trickled down into the generations. Despite all the hardships and inequality in reality that they were facing, they do, proceed to get themselves educated. And literacy went from pretty much zero up to 60% of African Americans knowing how to read and write by the 1900s, the early 1900s, by year 1900. And so there is, gain and momentum in that way. And newspapers would be sure to highlight issues that mattered to them from their point of view. So they might cover the same news story, but of course white papers would put a white supremacist spin on it a lot of the time and not be neutral. They would definitely be looking at it from one lens, okay? And African American newspapers helped to balance that out by showing a different perspective from, their perspective of the same news event and other things white papers wouldn't cover. They supported African American businesses and African American heroes of the time and, famous people of the time and that sort of thing. National right organizations will form. One of the most famous to this day, still in existence right now, is the NAACP. Some of you guys have probably heard that acronym before, the NAACP. It's all about ending racism, ending segregation, ending discrimination. That's what the NAACP is for. When it was first established, it was about African Americans getting equality and not having to suffer through discrimination and segregation. And eventually the NAACP will become an organization that will help any minority group facing discrimination or segregation and helping to push equal rights for everyone. Something else that happens is eventually when you get a few generations removed from the first generation that got their freedom, okay, you've had a little bit of money saved, or you've had a little bit of time to figure things out, or you've gotten yourself an education, right? People are going to start leaving the South. So you're going to see this great migration. It was actually called that, the Great Migration of millions of African Americans abandoning the South. It was just a place of pain, of Jim Crow, of corrupt politics, right? And so they leave the South for cheap land out west to go get a fresh start, or they leave for up north where they would also have more opportunities. And don't get me wrong, guys, the West and the North also have discrimination, also have, racism and things there, but it was way less than what they were experiencing in the South. And so it was a way for African Americans to get a fresh start. And so do they all leave? Of course not. No, there's still millions of African Americans living in the South, but millions of them also leave to go start new lives out west or up north. So there is advances, there is hope. Several Black colleges are founded during this time, including Fisk and Howard, are famous African American colleges, several others. There is, things that are moving in the right direction. It's just slow. Change comes slow, unfortunately. Okay, draw a line underneath everything you just wrote all the way across your page. Of course, we've got some NAACP videos, all right? That, my friends, is the last time this school year you're ever going to hear me say that. And so for those of you that just need to hear it again, one more time for you guys. Draw a line underneath everything you just wrote, all the way across your page. You are never going to hear me say that again. So, hey. All right, Q11, famous African Americans. Of course, despite discrimination, despite racism, despite issues, there is positive things happening in the African American community, like church congregations and businesses and newspapers and colleges forming. There's also famous African American leaders, you know, for that community making advancements. And we're going to look at a few of them here. Starting right here, this is George Washington Carver. He was a scientist. He had grown up as a farmer in farming, and he figured out hundreds of uses for peanuts, sweet potatoes, other crops, advancements in farming. He has inventions because of farming ingredients that included inventions in paints and plastics and a type of gasoline, and he helps make peanuts a stable cash crop for the United States. Even to this day, that is true. Then we've got Garrett Morgan. He invents the traffic light. He invents gas masks. He invents improvements to the sewing machine. We've got Ida B. Wells, who really puts her life on the line and puts herself in many dangerous situations over the years to report on lynching and discrimination throughout the South of African Americans and the plight of the African American section of the culture. She ultimately will end up owning an African American newspaper. Okay, we've got oh, I did that backwards. Sorry. This is Ida right here. My bad. So this is Ida right here. Okay. And this is Madam C.J. Walker, this one I was pointing to before. So Madam C.J. Walker, there's actually a 4 or 5 part miniseries right now on Netflix, I think it is, about her, if that's something you're interested in. Madam C.J. Walker is the first African-American millionaire in the United States. She opens beauty schools and has a hair care line for, as you guys know, African American hair is usually different textured than white hair or other ethnicities of hair. And so they often need special products or different products that work better for the texture and things of African American hair. So she creates those and has a product line for thinning hair, because women don't want thinning hair, right? So, and that's CJ Walker. She'll become a millionaire. And then we did Ada B. Wells. There she is right there. Then we got Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. These are both social rights activists, okay? They are civil rights leaders. They have very different views on how to go about doing that. Booker T. Washington was born into slavery, and he thought, we're not going to change white society. We're not going to change their mind overnight. So, hey, go get yourself an education and earn the respect of white people by showing them that you have practical skills and are useful in society. So he was more, you know, a moderate approach to civil rights. Let's earn their respect. Whereas W.E.B. Du Bois, he was way more about, no, we deserve respect. We should demand respect. And we need to prove that we're awesome and can be cultured and intelligent by going to school, bettering, you know, ourselves and getting ourselves an education, and demand respect. So these were both major names in the civil rights world. Booker T. Washington's the first African American since the Civil War to have dinner at the White House. Okay, Frederick Douglass had also dined at the White House. Booker T. Washington had dined at the White House. Okay, and then of course we have video clips on all of them, you guys. Also, I'm not going to cover it so much in the video here, but hey, you know, we've been concentrating on the Civil War and we've been concentrating on Reconstruction, but life goes on after, you know, during those things. Other things are going on, okay? Just because war is happening doesn't mean life is on hold for everyday things. So there's lots of inventions. This list here is just American inventions. So of course there's also world inventions that we use as well, but here just in the US are some inventions that come to being during the Civil War and the Reconstruction period. I recommend you guys pushing pause and taking a look at that list. And also, there's this list. These are just events that take place during the Civil War and Reconstruction period, because again, it's not the only thing going on. National parks are opening, books are being written, companies are being founded. So push pause and take a look at that list too, just to have an idea about what else is happening in this period of history. Otherwise, that brings us to the end of this lecture. Okay, do your summary, make good choices.